Good afternoon. Good afternoon. In a cultural context, I would say hotep. Hotep. And in the Muslim tradition, assalamu alaikum. So for those of you that may not be familiar with libation, it's an African ceremony that is done to acknowledge our ancestors. And given the significance of today's event, celebrating some of our ancestors and asking that the ancestral spirits guide us and touch us is certainly important and profound. And I appreciate the opportunity, thank you, Brother Raheem, for the opportunity to participate. And the first person that I always call when I do a libation is Brother Imhotep. For those who may not be familiar with Imhotep, the first true genius that we knew to grace the planet. The brother lived about 5,000 years ago. The brother was an architect, was a medical doctor, was involved in creating one of the greatest civilizations of all times in Egypt, which we commonly know as Kemet. In his name, can we say Ashe? Ashe. And I should have explained that when we do a libation, we use water. For those of you who may not remember, water is the most profound fluid of life. It is also the water that took us out of Africa and brought us to the Caribbean, Central, South, and North America, that many of our ancestors end up being enslaved in. And so I'm hoping, and I'm going to call Brother Elijah Muhammad shortly, but in his book, How to Eat to Live, he was recommending that we drink more water because our bodies are predominantly water. But when I think about our sisters and brothers in our ancient history, you have to call the warrior queens, one of whom was Hatshepsut. She was one of the only queens to serve as a pharaoh during a dynastic period. It's her name, can we say, Ashe? Ashe. And we say Ashe, which is a Yoruba word, which is equivalent to the word amen. But there were many queens, Nefertari, Nefertiti. And so when I think about the sisters and how some of our sisters are characterized in social media today, we have seemed to come far away from when we held our sisters up as queens. When you want to go back and really see, I want you to go back and look at images of the goddess Nut. The goddess Nut. So when our sisters and brothers in ancient Egypt would pay homage to our sisters, they would paint a picture of the goddess Nut on the ceiling. And so the goddess Nut was so profound that she would take the sun in her mouth at night, but so would pass through her body and be birthed every day. And so in their names can we say Ashe. Ashe. And as I mentioned, we were enslaved for hundreds of years. In this country, we count slavery from 1619, which is technically not correct, because before the United States was formed as a country, we were enslaved in the 1500s by the Spanish in Florida. But Queen Nzinga was one of our warrior queens that fought the Portuguese for 20 years before our sisters and brothers were allowed to put into slavery. And there's also a misperception that we did not fight back. But Queen Nzinga was one of the ones that fought back. Shaka Zulu was one of the brothers that fought back. There were many sisters and brothers that fought. What we don't remember is the fact that we were captured, we were shackled around the throat, around the wrist, waist, ankles, and sometimes had to be marched for hundreds of miles from the interior of Africa to where the slave forts were. And please don't call them castles, please call them slave dungeons, because that's what they were.
That's right.
And so when we're clear about that, then we would stay in there sometimes weeks or months before we actually got put on the slave ship. So you have an ancestor that survived that. You have an ancestor that survived hundreds of weeks on the slave ship. And we would only come up for air at best once a day for an hour. And so then we would sit, shackled around the throat, waist, wrists, ankles. And we would fight for food there. We would go to the bathroom there. Women would menstruate there. Children would be born there.
Teach.
You have an ancestor to survive all of that, and then survive hundreds of years of slavery in order for you to be here now. So with those ancestors, then can we say Ashe? Ashe. Yesterday, Rutgers had an event to acknowledge its role in slavery. Some of you may not realize, and would not be surprising that Rutgers would have some associated with slavery, given the fact that it was created as an institution before the United States was created as a country. One of the ancestors who they named yesterday was a brother named Will. So they found his information when they were looking through some of the records when our ancestors were enslaved, and then acknowledged that this brother was one of the brothers that helped to build some of the institutions on the campus. It's a deep history. It also says that for some of us, I'm an alumni from here, so for some of us, it takes a long time before our history is finally known. So as Rutgers is celebrating its 250th year, it took 250 years for this history to be known. And so, Brother Will's name, can we say Ashe? Ashe. You can't talk about Rutgers without talking about Paul Roberson. You can't talk about Rose without talking about W.E. Du Bois. or Kwame Nkrumah,
Right.
or Sekou Touré,
Yeah.
or Patrice Lumumba.
Yeah.
All of those brothers were critical as far as helping to move the process forward for us to understand that we have a global struggle. They had organizations that they were doing, and they really put in some profound work. And what you may not know about Roberson is the brother graduated 5-year academy, which means he was the top of the class. The brother was a 2-time All-American football player. Got 17 letters before he left Rutgers. Was the only brother on campus when he came. I want you to think about that. Only brother on campus. But when the brother graduated, he went to Columbia Law School, got a law degree. Because discrimination in the legal field couldn't practice. Became a world-renowned actor, entertainer, and activist. The brother could speak at least 17 languages. In the 1930s, was the most popular man on the planet because he could go all over the world and speak in the languages of the different countries that he visited.
Come on now.
So I want to make sure that we understand the shoulders of the giants that we're standing on. So in their names, can we say, Ashe?
Ashe.